Here's the thing with networking. It is so important. It can't replace being qualified. But if you don't have a means of networking, you're going nowhere. So you go to the happy hours. You get along with everybody somehow. I mean, that's part. This goes back to what I was saying about, like, one of the great things for me in ATEC, and not just ATEC, but really in all these little temp jobs, because it seems very false. There's this Hollywood connotation of schmoozing, but it's really marketing and self-marketing. You have to be on the forefront of people's minds. So it's not about ass-kissing. It's about, there are other important factors in a work environment, and that is how you get along with people. So that matters. Networking, very important. Networking, crucial. You can be the smartest person alive. You got to get out there. Don't ass-kiss. But just, you know. In one of Tom Riccio's classes, he referenced a book called The Rise of the Creative Class, and I can't remember who wrote it, but I didn't read it. But he said the argument in that book was that an MFA would become the new MBA, where they wanted MFA kinds of thinkers rather than business thinkers. Now, I don't fully buy that. I think the most powerful thing you could probably have is both. And if I wasn't $75,000 in student loan debt, I would go back and get an MBA. But why I got this job was because I could do so, I knew at least a little bit about everything. Because you can only take so many classes a semester, and really, if you're taking it 6 times, it's at the expense of other classes. And it's not everybody, but I do know people in ATEC who can't write. And even if your job doesn't require writing, you're going to have to write a cover letter. And you've got to be able to put words together. And to be able, ATEC's not going to hold your hand. And that was my big complaint about it the first year and a half, was that there was no guidance. But you know what? You're freaking grown up. So you know where your weaknesses are. And if your ego can't take getting a B-, you're going to suffer. I talk a lot. It's hard for me to say what I did in my interview because I talk so freaking much that I would cover all bases. I talked a lot about new media theory because I knew it was a knowledge set that not very many people had. And I'm going to cite 2 books in particular, Chris Anderson's The Long Tail and Henry Jenkins' Convergence Culture. And I really read those, and I use those all the time. In my thought process, in meetings, I use this all the time because it is a different society now. So I would talk a lot about new media theory. The other thing I had outside of ATEC was all of these art gypsy jobs, bearing in mind that my job in the arts unit is about the arts of North Texas. So I had dabbled so many times in all these different arts-related fields that I knew a lot of people, and I knew at least a little bit about every art form. And in the cases of some art forms, I know a whole freaking lot. So there was that, and I could prove it. And not just on the resume, but I mean, it was, I would make the claim on the resume, and then in the interview, I could back it up, and they could tell. I've been a New York Times information junkie for about 10 years. Another crucial part of getting this job was how familiar was I with the KRA programming. Oh, please. I mean, Channel 13, not so much. Got rid of my TV when I started grad school. But with the radio programming, I knew it all. And they had those expectations. That's what I mean about not focusing. They wanted a person who knew the arts, who knew the programming, who had a media background or a media production background. The new media angle. The 5th thing I did to stand out, and this is really important, I made them laugh. Was that good? Do you want me to prove it? But no, I mean, if you make, I don't even feel like I need to emphasize that. But no, I made them laugh. People want to work with that person. If you're not funny, don't try to make them laugh. If you are witty, use it. Hard work gets rewarded. everybody, I know everybody in the arts unit works crazy hours. You know, it's a 40-hour week, but Jerome Weeks in particular is my work ethic role model, and I feel like if I'm working less than he is, then something's wrong, because that guy works all the time. So you have all these great examples of people working so hard because they love the organization. And nobody here makes a lot of money. It's still a nonprofit. They're doing it because they have a freakish love of either 90.1 or Channel 13 or whatever, and I have that too. So the other good thing about working here is that I get to be on TV. Do you want more? I love attention, and attention is better than money. So when they asked for volunteers to do TV pledge drive, I always say me, and then they say okay. So I actually get to be on tonight, on Thursday. And there's nothing better than going back into those organizations where I got no respect and having people say, I saw you on TV last night. And I say, really? And what I'm really thinking is, yes, you did. I don't want it to sound like, oh, thank you, ATEC, thank you. But seriously, I would not have gotten this job without it. Not only, well, really, it's all the things we've covered today. The networking, dance with the one that brung it. I know I wouldn't have this job without Dean Terry putting in a word for me. And he was my #1 reference as well. It's a small town. Dallas is a small town if you're planning on staying in North Texas. Everybody knows everybody, period. But I'm going back. I mean, I cannot emphasize this enough with people. You have to be careful what you're focusing on, and that you're not focusing on something because you're scared of taking other classes, because that's just not going to serve somebody in the end. If I was going to give somebody advice, it would be the dumbest person in the class. Oh, this is the other thing. When there were several opportunities in my ATEC experience where you could do an extra project if you wanted to. Or extracurricular things, that type of deal. And I know people who would say, I'm too focused on academics. I'm not going to do an extra. Right. Oh, you're focused on academics. No one else is. But going that extra mile, I feel like a basketball coach in a way, but sort of like sweating the small stuff and going the extra mile. That's part of, those are things that can go on your resume. And by the time I was applying for this job, I had done so many little side projects, weird little internships that may have been successful in themselves and maybe not. I had one which was like almost a total failure. I still had fodder for the resume. And people will look at that resume, that's so much more important than GPA, and see that you've done all these outside projects. Give a gallery talk at the Dallas Museum of Art. Did it, it was a debacle. So what? Nobody knows that except the 20 people who showed up for it. But on my resume, I gave a gallery talk on Kawara at the Dallas Museum of Art. So people are impressed. All right, I'm not gonna say the last thing. Get out of ATEC sometimes. Leave UTD sometimes and get out in the world, because when it comes to networking, ATEC good, UTD good, ATEC good, School of Humanities better, you'll know more people. Even better is if you get into the city a little bit more and just sort of like cover all bases. I'm totally lecturing full of myself. You know what? For once I'm in a position to, so I'm gonna do it. I don't really know. I think they keep up with what's new. You just recommended a book to me. Did you hear about that through ATEC?
No, not my own.
I went to South by Southwest my first semester in ATEC. And people would ask me, I'd say I was a grad student, and they'd ask me where I went to school, and I'd say UT Dallas. And they'd say, there's a UT school in Dallas. People in Austin don't know that there's even a UT Dallas, much less an ATEC. And I saw that as a big problem then, and I see it as a really big problem now. Because, and I have some friends who moved and aren't living in North Texas anymore and are having a hard time getting a job because people don't know that school. So publicizing ATEC, that department outside of North Texas, is something that needs a lot of improvement. And part of that, it's got to be 50-50. I mean, the students have to get out there and push that, but I don't think the school does enough to promote itself outside. I really, really, really don't. And I've spoken about that before. Why? Because I have a big mouth.